I'm delighted to welcome John McIlearney to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice
Good
to be
afternoon to you, John. Fantastic. Well, as you know, I'm afraid I'm going to take you back just a few years to your last year in school. Were you the academic? Were you the sporting type? How did that all sit with you in your last year in school?
I was very much the sporting type.
All right.
I'd probably be a standard schoolboy where you do your training after school, and you'd also be playing your match on Wednesday afternoon, and on one on Saturday when we could find a team to play us.
Yeah.
And it was good. Enjoyed it immensely. In the last 2 years, I got a trial there for Leinster rugby football.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Very, very. I nearly got on the team.
Hmm.
I think they have used my style of rugby ever since. I was very fast. I was athletic. I
Right.
school 100 meters for 6 years. No one ever beat me. And
Fantastic. Wow. Yeah.
yeah, it was good. And that's why people liked to play with me on the pitch as prop forward. And I was
Right.
always very, very fast to the breakdown. When you get fast to the breakdown, you got a chance to turn it over in your direction. And that's why people used to enjoy playing rugby with me.
Yeah.
And then in the
Fantastic.
last year, I was made a prefect by the headmaster of the school, who was Trevor Dagg. He was a very good guy. And we had our own room, teas and coffees and bickies and everything. It was very
My
nice.
goodness. It
I
certainly
also
is.
ran the school tuck shop, and we
All
made our
right.
first profit
Well,
when I was there. So that was my very first enterprise, was running the school tuck shop.
so at least you turned a profit on your first enterprise. You also sort of got involved in a sort of a fundraising affair for transport. Let's call it that. Hey, you spotted a gap that needed to be filled.
Yes, indeed. Basically, we used to go and play cricket. And we were out in Mount Temple one day, and I was a bowler, fast bowler.
Right.
And I left my own cricket bat in the school's team bat equipment. And the guy who was with us didn't really like that teaching, the Irish teacher. So I got a lift in the following day with the assistant headmaster who lived close to me. And I said to him, "Why don't we get our own minibuses?"
Yes.
Told him what happened. I said, "Ed, I don't particularly want to go into town and out of town from Talbot Street anymore. It's just not safe." So but he thought it was a great idea. Bombs going off back in those days. So he thought it was a great idea. And we started fundraising for it, and door-to-door sales of tickets and so on. And the tickets we couldn't print enough tickets to sell them. Everyone around my neighborhood thought it was a great idea to do it. And maybe we should do the same. And
Sure.
eventually, we raised so much money, we got two minibuses.
Wow.
Back,
So
back,
opportunity meets needs, and you were very successful in that.
yeah,
But
it was
you
a great experience.
but you sort of had if you were to talk about the academic side, you had a sort of love for numbers. So that was going to set maybe the career going forward. Tell us a bit about that and where you went to.
Well, when I was a child, I brought for a walk by my mother down the road, and I'd add up the numbers on the doors, and I'd get them right. So she
Right.
said, "You've a head for numbers." We
Good.
knew then immediately that I had head for numbers. So I went in that direction, and I managed to get a job with Stokes Kennedy Crowley in those days. They're now called KPMG, and
Right.
it's in their small business services department in Harcourt Street. And that was a real eye opener, because you're at the coalface preparing
Yes.
financial statements, and are you good at this or are you not good at this, basically. So I was good at it, and I also noticed that all of the students that were coming in to study accountancy were all from universities. And I said, I need to get myself into university and give myself a fair crack at these accountancy exams, which are really difficult back in those days. Very, very few were let through.
So I
And
suppose you were doing articles at the time, which was one of the most common ways to kind of get into the world of accountancy.
yeah, so I got my university, went into Trinity, and I got my degree in there, and came back out, and they took me back on as an article clerk uh, for the 4 year, 3 or 4 year contract that they do back in those days. And I managed to get through it. I started in corporation tax, spent 2 years there. Then I spent 2 years in audit,
Right.
and that was an eye opener. the audits are very good and got a really, really good comprehensive training from them. They're one of the best in the country, you know. And after that, I qualified, and that was a big hooray, big
Mhm.
party. Uh, I had been working in Isaac in when I was in Trinity. It's a student association founded by John
Right.
F. Kennedy, and I had traineeships in Italy, in
All right.
Milan. It's with W.R. Grace Chemicals, so that's where I got my taste for the chemical industry. And they took me back 3 times, so I was very grateful for that. And they had given me 3 different jobs in the multinational corporation. One was in the area of budgeting, the
Right.
second was in the area of accounting, and the third was in the area of banking.
Hmm.
And in the banking area, they must have been one of the first in Europe to have had a direct link with their bank. So on a
Right.
Friday
Wow.
afternoon, yeah, on Friday afternoon, you'd sit down and they would key in who their, and then what would happen would be uh, over the weekend and the following week, they'd process the data and then money would be transferred into your bank account, the company that they were paying. So yeah, I think that they were probably at the lead of banking in those days, being one of the first. The company was called Boston in Italy, which made Bostik glue and
All right.
Scotch.
Yes. Right.
And it was eventually was purchased by Silvio Berlusconi's empire because he wanted the tape to make movies.
Well,
Right? The real tape, they made that for movies. So he took it.
but quite interesting. I mean, if we kind of just step back a bit, you got an opportunity to go to Italy, but you hadn't mentioned that languages was one of your strong areas of. Like a lot of people would have turned it down because they think, my goodness, how am I going to cope? Not alone am I getting involved in accountancy in a different country, but also having to cope with the language. How did you manage all of that?
Well, I have a very musical ear,
All right.
and Italian is very musical in its sounding and pronunciation. And I picked it up quite quickly. But a lot of people couldn't communicate with me, but they had a kind of a pidgin English. So
Right.
for the month that I was there, I lived in the air conditioning room. I was back out with them anyway, but I was always talking English to them. So they had a
Right.
month of English language lessons also. So it was very, very good for them too. That's how I got around it. The senior management all spoke English and
All
very
right.
good English as well at that. And they were really helpful to me when I was thinking about staying in Italy, living and working there.
Right.
I'd finished my university and finishing up, and they're giving me interviews at all sorts of leading headhunting agencies in Milan, making recommendations and everything. They were really, really very good people.
I mean, that
Um,
was fantastic. So, okay, you did that. What was going to come next in your career?
well, my application to do accountancy was accepted,
Right.
and I got the job, and they gave me my job back, and they were good people, and uh, that's basically what I decided to do it the 4 year article clerk. As I said, 2 years in tax and 2 years in auditing. And that would have opened the door to me to have a much broader international career. I viewed myself to go away from Ireland for a couple of years, get some good international experience. And that allowed me to do it. I was able to get into an accountancy practice in Milan. In those days, it was Price Waterhouse.
All right.
Uh, they were incredibly professional.
Right.
They were, yeah, they were really professional. They flew you down. They put you up in a very expensive hotel after your interview, everything like that. They were very, very professional people. And I worked with them about 2 years. In around 2 years is the length of time I did. But we found that the recession of 1989-90 that hit London, hit Milan maybe a year or two after the recession had hit. And we had a
Right.
problem international work. An awful lot of the international work that we were promised just did not materialize. And I noticed that. So I'd started looking around for other work through agencies and so on. And I came across one, and they said they're looking for a corporate auditor up in Brussels. Do you mind going to Brussels? I said, no, I wasn't attached to anybody in that stage, you know.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is John McIlearney. Okay, John, so you're off to Brussels. Again, language isn't going to be a barrier for you, although English is probably fairly prevalent in Brussels. What
It-
sort of work were you looking for there?
well, it was corporate audit work, which is different to internal audit. We would be looking at systems in operation in the
Right.
various subsidiaries. We're not looking at the finance. We'd be looking at the sales process. We'd take a look at the marketing process, personnel process, and that kind of thing is what we did. And we also had other projects given to us that, for instance, I wrote up an internal local procedures manual for the department. That type of thing was done for us. Those are the days when you had a computer, which is about 5 kilos in weight. And,
Yes.
they were heavy computers, but we used them anyway. And I went all over Europe. I was in all the major cities that were around the major countries, the Netherlands, Belgium. Italy was my main target. They wanted me to audit Italy for them, and I did. I did quite a lot of work in Venice. It's a difficult place to work because Venice is, how will I say it? It's full of little bridges.
Yes.
Bridges just out on the street. The bridges are also in the company. You have to go up the
Ah,
stairs, cross down the stairs to open the door to get to where you want to go. So you know, you get very fit working in Venice.
yeah, I'd
And
say you do. But
that
I
was
mean, it was fantastic that I mean you were getting an opportunity to travel Europe, to work in a lot of different companies. So it certainly brought you a great amount of experience. You must have also seen quite a difference in the sort of politics of various companies that you were working in.
oh yeah. You see, it's very easy for us Irish guys and gals to do this because we're well liked. We're also seen as being neutral, believe it or not. They respect all these kind of things. So you're not really getting involved in the politics because you're only on premises for 2 weeks maximum and then you're gone. But
Sure.
we did have to go and carry out some troubleshooting. Yeah, there were a couple of cases where there were bad relations between the chief executive or the finance director and the local finance accountant in a local subsidiary. We had to go in and sort those kind of things out. We came across a couple of frauds.
Mm.
Uh, fraud on a coffee machine,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was, ugh. And we also had thefts from the safe
Wow.
in Milan and Italy. Somebody got the keys somehow into the safe and stole all the luncheon vouchers from the staff.
Right.
And those kind of things we had to look into as well. I actually looked into all of the pharmaceutical companies that were in the newspapers and on the radio recently, AstraZeneca in Belgium, that one in particular. And I was shocked when I heard that they had problems with them making this particular COVID-19 drug. It didn't make any sense to me because when I did the auditing of them, it was like walking into a Swiss watch. It was perfect, pristine. There's nothing to look at even. One place there wasn't even a computer. They had outsourced it and the computers were run
Yeah, so
somewhere
they
else.
were running a very, very smooth machine. But I mean, this was all then to move you on to Eastern Europe, which must have been a cultural shock as the Berlin Wall was coming down. Tell us a bit about your experience in Eastern Europe.
Well, I was in ICI for about 6 months and we all got called into a meeting. They said that they're going to close the place down. So it took a couple of years to do that. So I was able to get 2 years out of them anyway.
Sure.
And I met somebody, I'd been looking around for something, and I met an English guy who ran a company in Venice. His primary function was to translate financial statements for banks. He's an accountant like me, an
Right.
English, married over there. And started working with him for a while. And I did a lot of work over in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia mainly. And
Right.
it was uh, training the young university graduates who are coming out into the accountancy practices. But they're all communists. So the
I
wall
mean,
had just done at that stage.
but the
And
culture in terms of how they organize business based on the old communist regime obviously was a legacy there that must have been such a cultural shock to coming out of sort of a sophisticated Europe.
oh yeah, you're very lucky that they would be that you were very lucky that the staff would stay all day in the company. Right?
Right.
They always seemed to have something else to do or to queue up at the shops for their groceries. Remember, you didn't have supermarkets in those days. They were all private selling groceries, and you had to queue.
Right.
My impression of the whole thing was Eastern Europe, where I was in Brno, the university city was, first of all, the extent of the alcoholism was shocking.
Wow.
Uh, you'd see girls bringing guys up the street absolutely legless at 11 o'clock in the morning.
My goodness
Um,
me.
yeah, vodka was a big thing in there, and beers and things like that. Then the other thing that struck me about the place was they tapped all telephones. Your phone was tapped, no matter
All
where
right.
you were. Your bedroom could have been tapped in the hotel as well. They're always listening in. Uh, Usually, the top floor in a hotel would be where the listening devices were kept. I was warned about all before I went. They were
Yeah.
paranoid. And the other thing that I thought about the place was they were very, very eager to get into the European Union.
Right.
They wanted in as fast as they could get to get away from communism. And I remember going for a walk one day, and I decided just to pop into a church, which was in Brno. And there was a mass going on at the time. The priest was up the top, and there was an old woman lying prostrate on the altar. I found that astonishing.
Wow.
That's how close they wanted to get to the church to keep away from the communists. And you can see
Wow.
why.
Hmm.
And everything was repaired in the Czech Republic. Nothing was replaced. But like Ireland of the 50s and 60s, there's a lot of old things that were repaired. But they were hard workers.
Yeah.
When you got them in and got them at it. They were hard workers, and they were very, very eager to learn the Western ways of doing things.
Yeah, and they'd been starved of a lot of that sort of education as well because of the sort of oppressive regime that was running in Eastern Europe at the time.
Yeah. But the chambers of commerce, the artigiani as they're called, the artisan chambers of commerce kept commerce going in those days.
Wow.
Uh, they were a fight off against communism, but they're the ones that kept it going.
Right. Gosh, that's amazing. And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is John McIlearney. And I suppose, John, we were just talking about Eastern Europe and the sort of cultural shock, the wall coming down. They were going to have to change their ways. Tell me, how long did you spend in Eastern Europe? Because then you were going to make another transition in your career.
I spent on or off about 2 years. I was based in Milan, and I'd fly in,
Right.
and it's always difficult to get a flight. That's like that. I remember I had to go in through Geneva.
Right.
Swissair flew in. You just couldn't get a flight to get in.
Right.
But I managed to get into Geneva. And that was all business class. What I vividly remember of the Prague airport, you were before security, you got your stamp for your visa to get out to be there for the length of time you're there.
Yeah.
But I also noticed something else, that they had received a fax or some kind of teleprinter that I was on my way in. They were
Oh,
able to match my name off a list of people who were coming in to the Czech Republic. Now, I wasn't followed or anything like
right.
that, but you felt that there was a security sense about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Big brother watching you.
Yeah, they're watching, right?
Okay, so you were to finish up with that. I suppose home beckoned around that sort of time. Tell us what was to sort of bring you back to Ireland.
Well, I had done that for 2 years in Venice, and then I went in Milan. I was living there, and I got a job in KPMG in Milan, and it's about a year and a half. So
Right.
into the contract, it wasn't great. There's a lot of problems at that time, generally in the economy and all that sort of stuff. So I decided that there wasn't that much multinational investment going in there. In fact, there's nothing I could see. So the work that we were doing was kind of like financial control work for investees or
Right.
corporations who set up, and we would do all the financial reporting. Italian accounting is nebulous.
Hmm.
It is very different to ours.
Sure.
Like they don't have accruals or they don't have prepayments. The company accounts that are lodged with what they call their CRO, which is the Chamber of Commerce's way of putting it on, or cash receipt based accounts signed off by a corporate auditor or by a statutory auditor. Very, very different to what we do here.
Yeah.
In many respects, it's a better system of accounting because it's all cash receipts.
Right.
They're the accounts that you put in. There are no notes and it's that kind of carry on.
Yeah.
So I was lost in that. I just didn't know the tax law.
Sure.
There's just no way I could advise anybody on taxes there. I did tax training courses and everything, which is nebulous for me. So I came on, we decided, I was married at that stage, and we decided come on back to Ireland in and around 98. We started both just looking around. And the missus, my wife, found a very good job here with Italian Bank that just set up on the dockside. They're all coming here, you know.
Yeah.
Usually they used to go to Luxembourg, but
All
then
right.
Luxembourg just full of what they call the Guardia di Finanza, so they didn't want to go there anymore. They came here. And the tax regime here was very, very good. It's very easy to work in this country, really easy to work here.
So you were going to set up anyway here yourself. What sort of work did you want to do at that stage?
Well, I had quite a lot of interviews when I came back. Nothing really grabbed me, you know.
Hmm.
Nothing really jumped out and sort of said, yeah, that's the job for you. I found everything to be very sort of in a square peg. It's kind of like a box. That's your
Right.
role. You do nothing else other than that. So I just decided to set up my own, and I went hell for leather doing that. I did an awful lot of part-time jobs, did an awful lot of tidying up other people's messes. Accountants had left
Hmm.
behind when they were companies that they left an awful mess behind. I did a lot of European VAT work. And then after that, I just noticed that the trend was for people who are setting up their own businesses. There were an awful lot of self-employed people who would be in the areas of, you know, the artisans, as I call them, the guilds, the chambers of commerce, and I got in with those and the enterprise boards. A lot of the work was mentoring people, helping people start up, get their business plans together, all sorts of things like that. And my goodness, there was an awful lot of work. A
Yeah.
lot
So
of
that, I
people.
mean, that was obviously going to provide quite an income. I mean, just conscious of the time in, I suppose, the last 3 or 4 minutes we've got here, you've moved on because you've taken a lot of that knowledge and skill and got involved in technology, which you're using apart from your consultancy work with sort of SME business owners and that. Maybe in the last couple of minutes, talk about the sort of technology and what sort of aspirations you have around it.
Well, I'm working on a couple of different technology projects at the minute. I'm working on two platforms.
All right.
Um, and I'm going to go in and work with one of the Leos, I think, or I'll get somebody appointed to me just to see what's going on it, and an app. And then I'm also working with an Irish guy in Italy who
Right.
imports Irish food and sells in Italy to all of the bars around the
Excellent.
place, the Irish pubs. So
Yes.
he's a very entrepreneurial guy, and he has
Hmm.
an idea uh, to, how will I put it, digitize e-commerce for in the area of retail, food selling in particular. Certain kinds of products will be very suited to that. So we're just working on that at the minute, getting it together and putting it all together. Um, and
And tell
that'll
us
be it.
about the app. Tell us about the app in terms of, I mean, let's put it this way. You and I are not of a young generation, and yet you're adapting to a world where technology is king. I mean, it always shows the resilience of entrepreneurs. So, I applaud you for that,
Yeah.
that you've immersed yourself in technology. What's the sort of aspiration around the technology, and what do you hope to see as a result of it?
Well, I hope to see digi-commerce. We call it digi-commerce instead of e-commerce. I like to see that happen. I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to be really good for e-commerce to bring in this, what they call digital twins. So when you're looking at a product, an Audi car, you very often see it on the screen moving around in different circles. That's called a digital twin. And they do that. So a lot of the big international companies do it. We're going more towards smaller company,
Right.
line merchant, so on. Regarding the app forms part of a platform that I'm looking at. And it's all to do with marketing and sales.
All right.
It's just a little bit sensitive at the moment.
I don't no
Like,
no. I let's not reveal any trade secrets at the moment. But I'm fascinated that you have found yourself in the world of technology, as I said, because you and I are not of this young generation that are so much involved in that whole world.
I did a BSc in technology when basically the digital skills academy, but the course that I did is outdated, totally, completely. It's
Right.
skill now. I'm not skilled of a springboard, and it's completely outdated. It's totally changed. So these projects are bringing me back up to date to where we are today. It's all social media and downloading a platform onto your iPhone or your Android. The difference in the cost um, for preparing something on iOS versus Android. iOS is about 3 times more expensive than the
Wow.
Android.
Yeah, it just shows you the power of the thing. I suppose in the last 30 seconds, is there a message you'd give to anybody in business? And we need to keep it to 30 seconds of what you'd like to say as we wrap up.
Well, what I've learned, it's vital to keep a very close eye on your business plan. Okay,
Right.
have to keep looking at that plan and bringing yourself back to your business plan and changing it, modifying, adapting it, whatever's going on outside around you. The second thing that I recommend to people would be develop a flash report every Friday. In other words, you look at your debtors, your creditors, your bank balances, what's coming up, what your sales like, what your costs, and so on. Make sure you do that every Friday before you close your business. Because Monday morning, you have to plan for Monday. That'll help you to think and plan for Monday morning. What have you got to get done? That's another thing that you do on a Friday is what do I do on Monday?
Okay.